We are young professionals living in Pittsburgh who care about the Black future of the city and the world. We meet once a week to discuss topics we feel are linked to the Black experience and determine amongst ourselves and guests which topics have issues that support or hinder our collective Black futures. And we share those conversations with y'all. We believe we can cultivate the Black future we want with discussion, planning, and action. And this is the discussion part. Today, we have uh, pretty hometown, local conversation centered around it. Uh, our speech, how we talk, is a marker of who we are. And it's one of the first ways other people really know who you are involuntarily. Like, before you can even tell anything about you, the way you talk really narrows so much down. And if you spend some time in Pittsburgh, you'll get a bit of what makes this area, linguistically different, especially in Black Pittsburgh. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm Qadir.
He's Quitter.
My name is.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Keon.
I'm Janelle.
Today we have a special guest. Everybody say, ah! So our special guest is Alexis Brown. They're going to introduce themselves, but I just wanted to give a little background as to how we came to meet this special guest, special individual. So on one of our weekly Wednesday meetings, we were trying to decide what the next conversation was going to be for Black Futures Friday. And we decided that we wanted to talk about AAVE. Shout out to Dr. Shalom, who referred us to Alexis. She said that Alexis was the perfect person to have this conversation with. And so we connected. And so that's how we got here. That's what brought us all together. And we would like for Alexis to introduce herself and tell us what she's looking forward to talking about with us today.
Okay, hey y'all. I'm Alexis Brown. Fam calls me Lexi, so feel free to do so. Born and raised Pittsburgh, East Side, Penn Hills, and I'm looking for. Oh, I'm a student. I'm a student at the University of Pittsburgh, a PhD student in my third year, working on my degree in linguistics and concentration in sociolinguistics. I do a couple fun things with my research, which we can get into a little later. I'm looking forward to just talking about AV in Pittsburgh. It's my bread and butter. I love talking about it. I could talk about it for ages. So I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So thanks for having me. And yeah, looking forward to it.
And so we don't even have to look forward to it anymore because it's happening right now. So we're going to jump into question number one. And the first question is, what is AAVE? And what makes AAVE in Pittsburgh unique?
Okay, so AVE, Ebonics, Black English Vernacular, Black Vernacular English, African American Vernacular goes by so many different names. There's actually a lot of debate around what it is. Widely, it's just how Black people talk. Like that's the easiest way to say it, how Black people talk in America. Um, the origins are a huge debate and inside and outside the linguistic community, but especially within the linguistics community. Some people say it derived from a Creole language, which was an amalgamation of Western African language, and they got this from like the different grammar that we use. Could be a derivative form of English, which is more like racist. Just saying like it's a defective form of standard American English, hegemonic English, mainstream American, whatever you want to call it, white English. But there's a lot of research supporting that it's an official language, and it's just because of the different isms that a lot of people don't consider it a language. They say it's a dialect or an ethnolect, especially since it has English in the name. But researchers like Dr. Geneva Smitherman and Dr. H. Samuel Lean are really two of the bigger forerunners for African American Vernacular English to be championed as a language because not verbatim, but in Geneva Smitherman's words, um, it's using the master's tools, but we create our own language. So like we have a lot of words that you can still hear in standard American English, but they have different semantic meanings and they have different um word structure, syntax, like the habitual be, all that type of stuff. Um but yeah, so that's AV in a nutshell. If you guys have particular questions, I could definitely get into that. But as far as Pittsburgh AAVE, from living here, I know it's harder for me to differentiate now, like what's AVE and what's like standard in my brain because I've had to toe both lines. But one thing that I've heard with Pittsburgh AV that's like unique is like in the vowels, particularly. So instead of any word that has eel in it or like e, uh, we pronounce it like ill. Like what's the deal? Stillers, all that type of stuff. Black people still say that, and uh, also what I found is like an amalgamation of different regions. So like stuff we say, like I could hear it in Philly, I could hear it in New York, I could hear it in like the DMV area. So like everything is kind of close. But then there's like colloquialisms, like a recent one I've been hearing the last couple years, but yada the mean, like know what I'm saying? Like that's pretty much what that means. Also like calling on hoods, that's like a really big Pittsburgh thing. So like Neffs, homies, Tizzy, all that type of stuff. That's very Pittsburgh, and I don't hear that much anywhere else. But that's where I hear like a lot of uniqueness in Pittsburgh AAVE rather than like different sound structures per se. So there's that.
Tell me what y'all think. So I think we've all had the opportunity to attend four-year universities that weren't in Pittsburgh. And that was the first time that I was somewhere outside of Pittsburgh where people were clocking me like, where are you from? Why do you talk like that? Why do you sound like that? You got to be from down south. And I'm like, no, just because it don't sound like super East Coast doesn't mean it's automatically from down south. But even in our call this week preparing for this, we were sharing like music and songs and references that reminded us of Pittsburgh AAVE. So shout out to Quadir because one of the YouTube videos that you sent me, I don't know if you sent me this one or it was like one of the songs that was on the playlist that was associated with the song I first played on YouTube. You know what I mean? And this song called it was like Esco. It was Fed the God. This was like 10 years ago. So everybody looks super different. It was Esco, Fed the God, and one other person and they're rapping, whatever. And someone says home, but the way that they said home was like home, like HOAME. And I was like, oh, there it go. Like, I now know what people experience when they hear a word that is like distinctly different from how they're used to hearing it. I was like, okay, yes, that's Pittsburgh AAVE. That's Pittsburgh talk. That's how we say things. Anything to me, and obviously you're the professional, right? Like you are the expert on this. Anything with a vowel, a long vowel, a double vowel, it's over. It's over.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely in the vowels. I hear it a lot. So I saw this video is somebody getting shoes. I immediately knew they were from Pittsburgh. And it was like not a Pittsburgh Instagram page or anything like that. It was about shoes. And they're like, uh look at the shoes. Like them roses tight and all that type of stuff. I was like, wow, that's straight from Pittsburgh. And lo and behold, went to the comments. I'm like, that's Pittsburgh. And then plus on the shoes they had like the Pittsburgh skyline and stuff about the Steelers and stuff like that. So it was just really really funny. Like yeah, it's definitely in the vowels that I hear a lot of Pittsburgh. Like I'm like, you're from Pittsburgh. I'm already knowing.
It's funny, Jordan, that you brought up, people calling out that we sound country or down south. I got that a lot too in college. And I think one of the ways that I was able to put perspective on it, not on purpose, but in a similar way to how you were listening to those songs. It's like if you ever turn on the radio and you hear people talking on the radio in Pittsburgh, you're like, oh my goodness, is that what we sound like? Wait a minute. Like, this is crazy. And that's like, I don't know, that's one of my favorite things, like listening to radio stations in different cities and like hearing the different accents, the different vernacular, like knowing the stuff that the younger kids are saying too, and like how that's incorporated. It is quite interesting, and I think this is the first time I've been able to have a conversation that is it like has the facts to back up like what's actually going on. So I definitely appreciate Alexis for being here. Lexi for being
here. Sorry. Excuse me. You know, when we think about Pittsburgh as a city, like, you know, geographically, I mean, we're not at east, like Pennsylvania itself, right? Like the east side of Pennsylvania is an East Coast area, right? But we're kind of the only major city in Appalachia, you know? And but at the same time, like work history of Pittsburgh, I feel like is part of the Rust Belt, you know, like Buffalo, like Cleveland, you know, and other parts of, you know, like that area of the Midwest. So, you know, I feel like all of that really kind of like is a part of like the identity of the city, you know, like the history of the city. What do y'all think? You know, like, what is Pittsburgh a East Coast city? You know, is it a, or like, you know, how would you describe that? I mean, you know, geographically, I guess, where would you put it?
I just want to say, not being from Pittsburgh, so I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, which is definitely on the East Coast. Um, and when I moved down here, first of all, I was terrified, all those cows and stuff, and hearing nothing but country music on the radio until we got close to Pittsburgh. I'm like, we done moved out to the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't know what's going on. So, and when I first came to Pittsburgh, I heard y'all a lot. I'm like, they sound really southern down here. And I just couldn't put my finger on it. And I couldn't figure out why. Cause I'm not down south, clearly. But now that I've been here for a while, I don't necessarily hear it. And I'm sure I've picked up on some of this slang. Um, just because that's how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I know for a fact, like that's definitely a thing. And even listen to my sisters now talk, I'm like, yo, who are you? Where are you from? Like, you are not some, you know, someone I would expect to meet in like a, you know, in the hood. Like, I'm like, I don't know, because it's just funny. 'Cause my mom, you know, she's from the California, right? So she kind of has her like Valley girl, like real proper ish kind of, and then we kind of had our East Coast, so we definitely sounded a certain way. But now that I'm here and like my sisters grew up here, like they sound completely different. Like they sound way more Pittsburgh than I do, and like it's oftentimes they'll talk, and I'm just like turn around like, yo, who are you? Like, but it's yeah, it's definitely an interesting experience.
So Lexi, I think Quitter, were you directing that question to Lexi? Like, do you see Pittsburgh as a East Coast city or a Midwest city or an Appalachian city or a fill in the blank city?
Yeah, I mean, I specifically definitely Lexi, but you know, any of y'all can also.
Um, so Pittsburgh is on the east. I wouldn't call it East Coast necessarily. Like I would say something like DC is like East Coast, or I
New
think things
York,
a little further over.
Jersey
I would
Shore.
even I wouldn't even say New York is necessarily East Coast. I might get some action behind that. But like just geographically, I'm thinking of the map. It's more east than Pennsylvania, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's East Coast, but it's on the east. Whereas like I consider the East Coast like everything that has the big body of water attached to it. Like you could go to the beach or something like that, and it has a big body of water, like an ocean. That's what I consider East Coast. So I would say we're in the East, but we're probably closer to like Midwest, like that.
East.
Yeah, Mid East. There you
Middle East. Got you.
go.
We
Yeah.
from the Mid East. So wait, you said New York is not East Coast. Are you saying because it's literally not on the coast of the
Yeah.
country? Okay.
Yes.
It is.
That's why I say that. Like
It's an island in the Atlantic Ocean.
All right. I'm not disputing that. I was just trying to get to understand why she said.
Flag on the play. No, New York is not on an island on the no. It's about an hour away from the coast, but it is not. There's the Hudson River. Manhattan looks kind of like an island, if that's what you're thinking of. But we talk about New York City, New York State. It's definitely not on the East Coast, but it is an hour away from the coast if you drive through Connecticut.
It's a
or,
lot.
like,
It's a lot
Delaware.
closer.
Yeah. He said it's an island. Well, I'm about to pull up a map.
Yeah, I need to see a map. But okay.
Right. And this is
Excuse
when we
me.
pull up the
Excuse me.
map so we can pinpoint like where is New York City actually?
Yeah, I'm lost. But okay, I'll say, please. I'm sorry.
Okay, we backing off of that one. I don't want no smoke with nobody. Look, there you did have a question about the influence that a region has on the way people speak, how dialects come to be, how they grow into how we use them and what we know them to be. Did you want to ask that question?
Sure, yeah. So, many are probably more familiar with, Yenzer talk, Pittsburghese, like downtown, I drive downtown, I'm from the south side in my house, blah, 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 whatever. Put a gum band around my hair, if I got it real long and I hadn't get it cut in a while. Uh, you know, but how have such two different dialects of English developed in proximity to each other, over time in the same span of time, but they're so different? Like, can you talk about how that happened and the relationship between the two?
Okay, to preface, I don't know how many times people found out I was from Pittsburgh, and they's like, "Oh, so you say downtown and yins?" And I was like, "No, that's how white people talk." But that attitude is precisely why, like, the two different dialects really emerged because so as part of the Great Migration, and when Pittsburgh was like a huge steel town, it was great for Black people to get jobs, like coming from the South and segregation going on. And we still had like segregation light, which is why we had like a really Black neighborhoods. So like the Hill District, we had have Hill District, we had Braddock, we had like Wilkinsburg. Well, Wilkinsburg actually used to be white. I think Homewood, but all these different places where around like the steel mills that were popular and where people had jobs. And then Black people kind of like not isolated themselves, but because of the nature of racism and segregation throughout the country, uh, it was like this linguistic isolation that happened as well, because you're mostly talking to just Black people, and then you have all these Black people migrating from the South, and the white people like, I don't want no smoke with that, so I'm a back off. And so there really wasn't a lot of intermingling until like the later 20th century, when the steel mills got shut down, and Pittsburgh wasn't really booming no more. So yeah, the term, there was a little bit of geographic isolation, but not very much. But it was mostly linguistic isolation wrapped up in like an attitude of not wanting to be associated with white people. Black people deal with this all across the country, like the whole when you were little and you taught you use school English, we'll put it that way. ooh, why are you talking white? Like, why are you trying to be white? You're such an Oreo. All these different types of things. I'm thinking about my childhood, and it's like this weird push pull that was going on that Janita Smitherman talks about too. Like, basically, you being black, you want to speak like your peers, you know, like you want to build community with them, but then you also know that the way you speak with your peers is not going to get you a job. Whether that's right or that's wrong, that don't really matter. It's just it's not going to get you a job, and people going to look at you crazy because they're going to think a certain way about, because you speak this lazy speech. You speak ebonics. You speak that gangster talk, that thug talk. You're not going to be successful. You're not going to be successful. You're not going to do that. So you don't even want to be associated with that. But you, as a black person, and you're trying to get money, you're trying to make a thing for yourself. You're like at this weird space. You're like, yeah, I want to speak how I normally speak, like with my family and stuff. But then, like, you get out in the world, and it's just like, I don't know. But also, like, as far as the Great Migration played a big role in how Pittsburgh AAVE sound. Like, a lot of people said I sound Southern, and case in point, my parents migrated from Birmingham and Mississippi. So it's like I have a lot of that influence as well. And they came up north, and now they're saying things like Pittsburgh, and they're saying things like in jest they'll say downtown, but I don't hear that unironically in black circles. um I say yins to be funny sometimes, but that's about it. Whereas it's really like I'm saying stuff like man, Neffs, homies, like shit like that, like yo, what's the bill? Like all that different types of stuff. But and then that's more a recent occurrence too. I mean, I come from a household where you gonna speak proper English. That was my childhood. You gonna speak proper English, and even I could get on a whole tangent about what is proper because it's not a thing. But yeah, that's really that's really how the two kind of created themselves, and they're still different to this day. So I hope that answered the question.
I think you brought some good light to like code switching and what that looks like and what that means and how it happened. And then, I mean, I can relate as well. Like my mom is an English and reading teacher, so my house was the same. Like I wasn't even allowed to write with contractions and like my English papers, like stuff like that. So I feel you on that.
So, as we were preparing for our illustrious guests, we were obviously talking about AAVE, our own experiences, the difference between how we speak and how the region is identified and how the way of speaking is identified when we leave the region, right? So Yinzers and the association, if you're from this area, you speak a different way, or you speak a certain way, excuse me. But Lexi, you were telling us that your specific research is kind of related to AAVE and the cultural expression of music, hip hop, pop culture, and how all of that is working together. Do you want to share a little bit with us about like what your research is about and how that relates to Pittsburgh AAVE specifically?
Okay, so I don't have any research specifically in Pittsburgh AAV, but since I speak it and that's where I come from, that's kind of like my baseline at all times. But as far as my research projects, I have a few under my belt at this point. And yes, they all deal with music and linguistic structure within rap music, hip hop being the culture, but rap being the music, to get the verbiage. So my first project was about Mac Miller's association with the place of Pittsburgh, like the geographical space, and how it's really interesting because he's always codifying himself, especially on in his earlier stuff, like kicking incredibly dope shit and and Blue Slide Park, they had a lot of Pittsburgh references, even in the song titles. So my specific project was on Frick Park Market and how he characterized what I call Max Pittsburgh. So he's using his words. He's using his words like saying like me versus you, like I'm the starter, you to fill in, you a cockroach, all different types of things to differentiate who's his people, who's the people he's gonna put on his tab, to quote his chorus. And he does a lot of interesting stuff with that. But then a connected kind of like vein and idea, I said, well, Mac and Wiz are from the same place, pretty much. Like they went to the same high school, like a couple years apart, but they went to the same high school, grew up in the same place, but their conceptions of Pittsburgh are like wildly different. So whereas Mac Miller is talking about Frick Park Market, like actual geographical spaces and stuff like that. So like Frick Park Market, Blue Slide Park, English Lane, all of these different types of things. I'm thinking about Wiz and Black and Yellow and Pittsburgh Sound and all that type of stuff. And I'm just like, Wiz ain't talking about the places, he's talking about the people. He's talking about his community. Um, and like Mac has elements of that, of course, but it's like he's always hearkening to Pittsburgh, the place. Even in an interview, he said, uh, a lot of people might not know what I'm talking about, but the people that know me and the people that know Pittsburgh know what I'm talking about, right? He's creating like this set audience that are gonna feel him. Whereas Wiz, like, although he showed, I'm thinking of Black and Yellow, the video specifically, like he was in the waterfront, he was in like the place where he grew up, and you could see these scenes, right? Like, but they weren't that important to the song. He was talking about his people, like Black and Yellow was like a movement. Taylor Gang was a movement. It was about the people. Whereas Mac Miller was okay with being a local Pittsburgh boy, so he went to the places, he did the things. But if you think about like the history of racism, especially in this city, well, of course, Black people wouldn't really associate with the geographical spaces and physical places because they weren't allowed in them. The places that they were allowed in were places that where they can build community and be with their folks, be with their people, and it would make sense. So that's the one project. That's my first project. Actually, it's my baby, and uh, the second one I worked on was about um creativity in rap music, and because rap music is very understudied in linguistics like as a whole, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. I mean, other than the obvious like racism, and they don't think it's a valid it's not real music, whatever that means. But I was like, okay, so in this music it has structure, like you could tell when there's bad rap music. And I was really just starting to pick apart the creative aspect of it, like how it can be infinitely creative. And it's in the lyrics, like it's in somebody's flow, it's in the style, but then it's also in sampling strategies. So I was looking at Missy Elliott, She's a Bitch, was sampled by Ski Mask, Slump Gods, Catch Me Outside, and Lady Leisure's Black Panther. So I looked at all three of those and their rhyme structures and their sampling strategies to see how they were keeping Missy in the loop, and then also how they're adding their own spin on it, and incorporating their own style to create something brand new, but it has echoes of the former. And that's really important in the Black community too, because sampling ain't new. Sampling, if you spin a good sample, people gonna remember that, and then people are going to look back. It's like contributing to this wider patchwork of the Black community and how important music is and building community. So that project looked at that. So it was taking like a classical theory and bringing in that sampling component. Say you really can't talk about rap music without talking about sampling, without talking about style, because you won't have the essence of blackness, really. Like blackness is creative. To be black is to be infinitely creative. And then the current project, which is still in progress, I'm looking at characterization of rappers in their music across their careers. Um, so looking at Jay-Z, Missy Elliott, Lil Wayne, and Nicki Minaj, and seeing how they characterize themselves in their music through their words, and like really just looking into like what makes them popular, because you know for them to have as long as careers that they have, there has to be something in their lyrics and either the way they tell stories or the way they characterize themselves that people are feeling, and that's why they keep listening to the music and getting involved in the fan base. So that's the current project. But yeah, I'm always thinking about music and how it relates to like the black experience really as a whole. So that's my work.
I just want to say that sounds very, very exciting. Is there any way or any place folks can find these projects that you're working on? Like, do you plan on sharing them online or writing a paper to like publish them?
So I'm working on publishing my Mac Miller paper. So I have to give it a lot of tweaks and add some things. Because since my first year, I have grown in, in how I write and do things. So that one, but I've presented that at a conference. The International Pragmatics Association. I'll have to give y'all some links and see if I can uh present that to y'all in some way, shape, or form. But that one, oh, I also have one about Jamaican dancehall and rap music and how those are interrelated through language contact. And I presented on that in January for the American Dialect Society. So that one, and then I presented the sampling one at NWave last fall, I believe in October. So I'll have to gather some links for you guys. And but hopefully those will all be published. We're inshallah. But uh, yeah, I'll definitely get some materials for you guys to share and see my work.
Awesome, that'd be great. We're trying to have those linked in the chat, not in the chat, in the description for those of you watching this on YouTube.
Um, just from what you're talking about, uh, one thing that I just kind of just think about sometimes is like the history of hip hop, right? Like there was a capital city, right? For the longest time, right? New York was kind of the center, the epicenter, cultural epicenter of hip hop for generations, right? Now I would say that probably a much more important cultural epicenter is probably Atlanta, you know, um, than like I mean, just like what popular music is like right now, like that. But has the I guess the like voice style, like the I guess the flow choice, the way that people have changed, been influenced by I guess the regional shift. You know what I mean? Like how have rappers from all over the country, and I would assume that the internet probably has been a big part of exposing people to this anyway. But how has like I guess the cultural epicenter of the genre affected how rappers all over rap?
That's a very good question and something I think about very often. Because although I am black and I know a lot of rap music, it's only recently when I went to my HBCU I was very exposed to rap music and uh like the different regions that come with it, like, oh, this is drill rap, oh, this is boom bap, oh, this is trap, especially trap. And to anyone that I didn't actually say this in the beginning, but I graduated from Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, for my undergrad. It's So yes, in the beginning, the epicenter was really New York. That's where DJ Kool Herc, the father of hip hop, really came to be, and he was a Jamaican immigrant too. So, and really, a lot of things that we know as rap today came from Jamaica and dancehall culture. Um, and so I think once that was created and we had our Run DMCs and our Grandmaster Flashes and stuff like that, people all over Black America was really like, okay, I want to find my voice too. I want to find a unique voice that would echo the voice of like my people that I grew around with it. So I don't know where the sounds themselves like came to be. So like uh but LA, you got like 808s and you got the laid back type of, it almost sounds like off kilter rapping. I'm thinking of like people like Sugar Free and people like well, like Tupac and all that stuff. So it's like a little bit more laid back sound and the hyphy movement. And I think those two, like the East Coast versus West Coast, it started like then it started like collapsing towards the middle. So now we got Detroit rap, so like Detroit drill rap. We got Chicago rap. We got Southern rap. So I'm thinking about Outkast and Migos and all them. Then we got Texas. We got your Megan Thee Stallions. We also got Florida. We got your Kodaks and your Ski Masks. Freaking Chief Keef up in Chicago and stuff like that. And it's just, I think a lot of it just had to deal with like everybody wanted to find their sound at a certain point. And but everybody loved rap because that was like the voice of the people. Um that was the voice of the people coming out of the 80s and even now. Like yeah, we have a lot more R&B, but what's really popular is um rap and like different iterations of it. So yeah, I think it just had a lot to do with like the social component of it and just trying to build community and build a sound that is unique to a certain place to let their voices be heard, because the only voices to be heard weren't just from New York, they weren't just from LA, they wasn't just from the Bay Area, but they were from all these different places. So I think that's how like they really came to be.
So as we were going through like the regional influences on dialect, the regional influences on music sound and style, I remember thinking like I didn't think that Pittsburgh rap hip hop had a unique sound. Like I couldn't identify it. I didn't know what it was going to. I don't know. I was just like I don't know. Like Pittsburgh, they rap. I don't know what our sound is like. How you can identify a Houston style of rap or an Atlanta style of rap or an East Coast style of rap. But I think now as I get older, I think that Pittsburgh sound is super influenced by the Midwest and from the South, like that 3 6 Mafia, Bun B, like there's just something about, and I don't know if that's because that's where a lot of people migrated from, and it's like a cultural thing, or even like on a DNA level, like we respond to those types of sounds that comes out of those places. But when I was looking at some of the music that's come out in the last decade and some of the sounds that are really popular from the city, I think that drill music is like Pittsburgh. If you listen to a Pittsburgh song with a rapper, they're rapping. Where's the hook? There is no hook. You're rapping through the whole song, like the whole entire song, and like that. I don't know, that Chief Keef, that Dirk, Vaughn style of rapping. Shout out to Chief Keef. I don't know if he was the first person to start rapping as a drill rapper, but that's as far as back as I can remember the first time I heard like that. Don't like when that came out. When that came, bruh. But so when I listened to the more like iconic, respected songs that have come out of the region by Teflon, by Hardo, by FTR Drama, by the people who were like 06, 09, like really going crazy in that era. That's what it reminds me of. And I think that for anybody in the city who has ever thought about like what is Pittsburgh's unique sound, or like how do we sound, or really try to identify it, I think those would be good artists to go back to listen to see if you hear any similarities, or go back to those regions where those artists are from to say like, okay, do our drums sound like that? Do our cadence sound like that? Do the hi-hats sound like that? And definitely shout out to the producers who were making music during that time, the Stevie B's, who was making music? The Icy Two Times. Who else I don't know, just like all the producers who were like creating this super unique sound that I think is the foundation for what we're hearing coming out of the city now. Definitely deserve recognition, and a hats off for being the people to spearhead that.
Yeah, I agree. No, I was just gonna say I agree with that. It's the Pittsburgh sound, as like I'm trying to like tease it out because I've asked so many people like, what is the Pittsburgh sound like? And nobody's been able to give me like a super definitive answer. And I think it does have something to do with like the ties are just from so many different places. I've had my sister tell me like, I don't know, if you could do the Pittsburgh to it, then it's a Pittsburgh song. And I was like, well, you can do the Pittsburgh to a lot of things. So I don't know. Like, I don't know that can coincide, and that's an irrefutable proof. But I do know I can to a lot of Pittsburgh songs. I can do the Pittsburgh. For all who don't know, that's a dance. But yeah, it's just I think it's hard to differentiate for a reason because Black Pittsburgh comes from so many different places, and we got ties from so many different places, and then people leave, people come back. It's I don't know. It's just a lot of different things. You get a lot of different influences, so you're going to hear a lot of different sounds. So I'm thinking of like WAPO, RIP, and like his sound and how that matches up with like Hardo and all them, and how it's just like it's similar but it's different, and I think it's similar because of like the things that they're rapping about, maybe like it's the way they pronounce things, but they're different in the way the song sounds in and of itself, like the production and everything like that, so that can sound different. So it just shows like how deep this shit is. Like it's not just it's not just about a place, it's really about the people, it's about the community, and how you identify yourself, and then what are you creating that speaks to that, and like how you identify yourself, how are you speaking of yourself, and that's really what music and the Black experience is about.
So I was just thinking a couple different things while you were saying that about just influence being from so many different places and leaving and coming back, and what that can do, like me as an artist visually, definitely not musically, but picking up influences from other places, and like bringing those back to your hometown, and like what does that look like? And then I think we had kind of got to the brink of talking about how the internet, Quadir was saying, like social media and things like that, they just expose you to other things in other places as well. And I remember like one of the first projects I did in Pittsburgh after moving back from New York, there were some guys from my neighborhood who came to see the project, and they were like, this looked like some New York shit. Like, what is this? And I was like, that's crazy, because that's where I just came from, right? But I'm from here. But like, that's the influence that they could see in my work. And I feel like musically that happens a lot too, where you can just hear like those other influences. And like, even now thinking about like Wiz Khalifa, like there's definitely a Cali style to his music now versus when he was in Pittsburgh at first. Like, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just an interesting observation. So getting back to, like our theme and how things kind of evolve and understanding like what things mean for Black futures, right? For what we've already seen and what is to come. Like Lexi, what do you feel um, like how could Black futures be affected by what we're seeing right now in AAVE or even like on the music side later down the road? Like it's we've kind of gone through this evolution of this is a code switching only to now people are really owning up to like, I don't care what you think professionalism is. I don't care what you what you think is speaking proper or properly or whatever. Kind of disregarding some of the more traditional like English grammar and things like that, moving away from those types of things. So it's kind of a double loaded question, but like how do you see these things impacting Black futures?
Um, I see honestly it creating like it could go two ways. So one, with all these influences coming in and getting intertwined, it has the potential to build stronger community ties, just like within the Black community in America as a whole. Like it could build community ties, but it could also turn a different way. It could also turn into splitting hairs, like oh, this is the Pittsburgh sound. No, this is the Pittsburgh sound. Oh, this is New York. No, this is New York. I mean, we even see beefs about that now. Like, nah, that ain't real New York. This is real New York. That's not real Pittsburgh. This is real Pittsburgh. So it could go definitely both ways. But I think what people have to do is really make the conscious effort to make it a community builder rather than something that's divisive. Like, it has to be a conscious decision. Um, like to really just like it's hard to predict the future. Nobody really can, but it's just I see Black futures and I guess a better light. I'm hoping that things like this build community and show that because all these different people have been touched by different music and different ways of speaking that go across, and with social media and the internet being involved with it, you're touching so many different languages at one time. It's like just like as a joke sometimes, like me and my friends will be like, we not have that. And all like I don't speak Jamaican Creole, but it's like bringing stuff like that in, and I'm getting influence from that from like the internet and like stand-up comedians from Jamaica and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see. Well, it will be interesting to see if this is going to be a community builder or something that eventually becomes so divisive that it just separates us further, which is like worst case scenario. But it seems like that's what just seems to be happening every time.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. I think that we as people sometimes, although we try to find and build our communities, there's often that creates the other, right? And then that becomes a problem when we get too into our tribalistic quarrels with each other. But one of the questions that I wanted to ask are, and this is something that I've noticed just with TikTok. Um, I'm starting to like pick up these sounds and these sayings and like include them in my language. There's a lot of like internet native language that's now becoming, nomenclature. So are there linguists that are tracking the future of language? And is there anyone specifically looking at how that's affecting what's traditionally looked at as African American vernacular?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research that's coming out in like the recent years that's really looking at like the phenomena of Gen Z language, as everybody keeps referring to it, and as you can see, it's really AAVE by another name. There's definitely recent papers looking into it, but uh it's definitely a more recent phenomena. I think people have been looking on AV and the internet like in on the sidelines, but now it's really being brought to the forefront, and people are like in the mainstream are really talking about Gen Z language and what are the components, and uh like I play this for the past 2 semesters. I've been teaching aspects of sociolinguistics, and I play this very cringy scene from SNL about Gen Z Hospital, and all it was AV, and it was just so poorly used. Like they were just like, "Is our bro gonna be okay? Yeah, facts. Is he gonna be okay? Sis," like all different types of stuff, and I'm just like, but that's really how people on TikTok be sounding. I'm just like, what's the deal for real? Like, but I think a lot of linguists are really starting to look more into the internet, especially TikTok, and the influence that has been having on like the wider culture and how people are speaking in real time and outside of the internet. So just like those different mediated discourses.
So while you were talking, I was thinking, I was listening, but what popped in my mind was, okay, this SNL example, like the cringy, weird hospital, TikTok, Gen X hospital, Gen Z, not Gen X, Gen Z, thank you, hospital was using a lot of AAVE and slang, and how that's so associated with something like not being up to par, like not professional, or that is the indicator that something is ghetto, right? But also I'm thinking about where I'll say like let's say like the last 5 years, like where popular language started and how it's just integrated into regular conversations. I feel like Young Miami needs some type of award, because when she was saying on period, I was like, girl, like stop. But now I say period. I say period. I say period poo. I feel like Roland Ray needs some type of award, because Santana, or like I really use these words in real sentences, and I feel like there's not enough respect being put on people's names and their contributions. But we're seeing these words, we're seeing these ways of speaking popping up in popular culture, even popping up in like regular everyday conversations and maybe arenas you wouldn't think that these words would pop up in. Um, but I say all that to say I feel like that's just a testament to AAVE regenerating and new things coming about and entering into like the cultural lexicon, and people who we don't expect to be the creators or the initiators of these new terms, like not getting respect, not getting their just due, but like these words just making their way into the world.
I was
Period.
just, I was just gonna say, like, for example, the word fleek, right? You know, like that derived from a single video. You know, it was derived from like a single piece of I don't remember what like where was it? It was on Vine, right? Maybe IG. I don't know, but I mean, like you know, it's so ubiquitous, but like it was a single moment. It was a single person. Don't even know who that person was. Wasn't a celebrity, but you know, like the fact that I mean, that's just the nature of viral content, right? Like it can do this and it can change our culture, right? It can change our society.
I believe that Beyonce had Bootylicious added to the calendar after she came up with the song. They had to like, you know, add it to the calendar because I don't know. We just have that effect.
Yeah, that's actually a question in the the Black culture trivia game was about bootylicious being added to the Urban Dictionary as a word, or the real dictionary, not the Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, I think Merriam-Webster definitely got that on lock.
Yeah.
Why that became the authority of what's a word and what's not is a whole different question. But no, but it like viral content and viral nature of stuff just takes on a life of its own. So like freaking Sweet Browns, ain't nobody got time for that. We got hide your kids, hide your
Mhm.
wife, because they raping everybody out here. I quote 10,000 of them.
Yes.
And they take on a life of their own. People adopt it into their lexicons and their daily speech, and it just becomes spread that way. And then or on fleek, or even stuff with dances, it just takes on a life of its own. And it's just it's crazy like how all of these things end up culminating, and how pervasive the internet is, and in today's like culture. Yeah, it's just real interesting.
Well, that makes me wonder, though. I mean, isn't this how new words have always been created? It's just that now we have such a way to like, like immediately record it. Like we're in just, like we're in a time of, recorded history where we're able to have so much recorded, like, and just we're able to store so much things at the moment. But I mean, is that not how words have always been created? Or like, is this unique to the moment, or what?
um Everything's fake, for one. Like I could say a word ain't real right now, and it could be added to the dictionary tomorrow, and all of a sudden it's a real word. Just like I'm thinking of an anecdotal example of how ain't wasn't in the dictionary. And your English teacher was like, ain't's not a word, ain't's not a word, ain't's not a word. Okay. This one specific year I went to the dictionary and ain't was in there. And I was like, oh, okay. So now you have irrefutable evidence it is a word. But yeah, all words are created by people, are created in mind, and then they're constituted by other people saying them. And when enough people say them, they're considered widely socially as a word. That's really how that works. That's how words are created. That's how even things like on fleek have been created. But I think the phenomenon that's like really interesting now is like it seems to be happening at a lot faster rates because of the internet. Now, whether that's actually true or not, that's a cause for more research. But it seems to be happening at such a fast rate because it's like right in our faces at all times. So things like continuous timelines with Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. It's just like it's always in your face, and then people are even talking about it on the news, like all different types of words, like oh, what's the new hip word today, and all different types of stuff. So yeah, it's happened before, but it seems to be more in our face now because of the nature of the internet.
Wow, that's really interesting. This is, I mean, I'll ask this. This is kind of, I just really want to know this. I really want to know what you think about this, but this isn't really like directly connected to this thing. It was kind of connected. There's something we talked about a while ago. Um, yeah. Recently, I've been really getting into much more like uh, reggaeton. You know what I mean, right? And like one of the styles of reggaeton is called dembal, right? You know, like you probably heard this rhythm before. It's like that, right? It's like literally probably like the most ubiquitous rhythm there is in reggaeton, right? But like that rhythm started from a single song, a Shabba Rank song called Dembo, right? And that song was like a huge impact on. I mean, but like reggae, dancehall has like a tradition of just using different rhythms, right? Like rhythms are a big thing, and like and so, but it's kind of like reggaeton was built like on a big foundation of reggaeton right now is this single rhythm, you know. Um, but earlier you were talking about. I mean, that was just what made me think of this, and just earlier you were talking about like uh, dancehall's influence on hip hop, or you highlighted that before, and that's just what reminding me of that, specifically in relationship to reggaeton. Can you talk about a little bit more about that before we go?
Okay. The basically what I found with the research project that I did, I was hearing like, Drake's Too Good, and I was hearing uh Bomb by Jay-Z and Damian Marley. I was like, why is there so much like dance hall in dance hall and Afrobeats and rap music? So it actually goes back to the 1950s and perhaps earlier, where I went back to the 1950s. There was a lot of cross-cultural contact through music of Black America to Jamaica, and also arguably the other way around. But there was just a lot of cross-cultural influence over the time, and I think that uh, even Jamaican independence was at the same time as the civil rights movement, and then they were both after the fact trying to find their voices. So it just became a right breeding ground for a lot of this cross-cultural contact and influences such as that. And I could go in a lot deeper, but yeah, there's levels to it, there's history to it, and a lot of the things that we think of that came from rap actually came from Jamaican dancehall and imported to America by way of immigrants and things such as that, like DJ Kool Herc, who was Jamaican and brought the turntable tradition to America, and that's how we got people like Grandmaster Flash and stuff like that. So that's really what I found that it came with, and the language came with it as well.